Welcome again, everyone, and thank you for joining. All attendees are currently in listen-only mode, and the webinar is being recorded. It will be posted to our YouTube channel by the end of the day tomorrow. My name is Julia Pascarella. I am the creative manager at AYRO, and I'll be facilitating the conversation today. Today, during our webinar, we will be talking with our Vice President of Business Development, Kyle Mazzanti, and our Director of Marketing Communications, Shauna Gernan, about transitioning fleets from traditional internal combustion engine vehicles over to electric vehicles. The presentation will last about 15 minutes and will be followed by a 15-minute question and answer session. If you do have questions during the presentation, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A chat, and we will answer them during the Q&A session. And I will go ahead and get the presentation started and start with a little bit of an intro to AYRO. AYRO designs and produces zero emissions vehicles and systems that redefine the very nature of sustainability. And to kind of get started with our topic for today, I'll give kind of a brief overview of what a fleet vehicle is and kind of the current landscape and the direction that fleet vehicles are going in. So a fleet vehicle is vehicles that are typically owned by corporations, government entities, public utility services, and these vehicles are used to transport goods and services. And typically these fleet vehicles can be passenger vehicles. So this would be something like an enterprise car rental. And then there's tractor trailers. So that's, companies that rent out heavy equipment to maybe construction companies that don't want to own their own tractor trailers. And there's delivery vans and trucks. So this would be kind of your Amazon, your FedEx, your DHL. And then there's also golf carts and UTVs. So this would be, a golf course owning a fleet of golf carts for their golf course, or a resort owning a fleet of UTVs for maintenance purposes at the resort. And so kind of what we're seeing right now is a transition from fleet vehicles, from fleets using internal combustion engine vehicles over to electric vehicles. And then another shift that we're also seeing is a transition from higher speed, long distance vehicles over to low speed electric vehicles. And just to remind you, a low speed electric vehicle is a small compact electric vehicle that can be driven on public roads that are 35 miles per hour and under, and has a maximum speed of 25 miles per hour. And these low speed electric vehicles can serve a myriad of purposes. They're small, they're agile, they can be taken into areas that larger vehicles typically can't, while still being able to carry a large payload. So they're kind of a happy medium in between these two. And these are being used more and more these days for micro-mobility or last mile delivery, kind of smaller community or smaller area purposes. And I'd like Kyle to speak a little bit about the growth of electric vehicles.
Yes, good afternoon, Julian. Thank you. So we've seen exponential growth in this segment as it pertains to just electric vehicles in general. You can see the stats. I mean, 50% increase by any measure is incredible. And 15 more million of these on the roads by 2040. Huge growth. Well, the same thing is happening in the segment that we're participating in right now, which is the low-speed electric vehicles. If you go by a per capita number, it's not as dramatic perhaps as the actual dollars that the industry represents right now. It's a $10 billion a year industry. It's going to grow another $5 billion in about 3 years. That's about a 7% growth rate overall. That's any business would love to see that. So we're participating in that segment, and we don't see any end in sight as more and more acceptance comes in.
Wonderful. And what do you think is driving that growth?
It's a number of things. First thing probably would say that it's just the mandate for green technology being handed down by the world, by governments, by municipalities, by local authorities that said, look, we want to have a sustainable future here. We want to keep our planet green. We want to quit burning fossil fuels, and we want to use our resources sustainably and smart. And also, if we can drive costs out by doing so, that'd be a good thing. So I think that's one aspect of it. But as far as it pertains to the actual vehicles, there's certainly efficiencies in how they're constructed. The fact they're not burning $5 and $6 gallon fuel in certain aspects, and certainly the serviceability of them is much less than a conventional vehicle.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So could you both, Shauna and Kyle, kind of talk a little bit about why somebody might consider switching to an electric vehicle?
Absolutely. So to ping on to what Kyle just stated, but federal, state, and local governments are really driving that transition to electric vehicles. It's become a priority in the last few years, and we'll continue to see that trend. So universities and corporations, just to name a few, have accepted this challenge, and they've established their own goals in reducing their carbon footprints, and that fleet of vehicles is a key part of that.
I think also you could add that it will be a lower long-term cost in time and money savings. And it's driven a lot by fuel costs, certainly, but actually the serviceability and parts and pieces, a lot less moving parts and pieces, by the way, in a low-speed electric vehicle than a conventional vehicle. Less to go wrong, less to break, less to have to spend money in upkeep. And I think the other piece of it, and Shauna touched on this too, is just it's a feel good. It's better for the planet. I think we all recognize that. And as businesses adopt that, they're going to get a positive bump off that from being an early adopter. Yes, it's going to save time and money and add to their business, but they're going to give a positive impact back from the general public for what they're doing.
Absolutely. And a lot of customers are actually making choices on the brands they choose based on how those organizations' missions align with their own personal beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's become something that people, are expecting, I think, these days. So
absolutely. Sustainability is a priority.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So say somebody does want to start transitioning their fleet over to electric vehicles. Let's talk a little bit about where a good place to begin would be. Kyle, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I'd love to. Let's start with the AYRO Vanish. How about that? And I say that a little bit selfishly, but also because we're operating in a lane that nobody else is occupying right now. We are in the segment of low-speed electric vehicles, as you defined. However, what we're offering is a solution that incorporates a lot of the attributes of full-size vehicles with the movement of small utility. And by that, I mean, you have a vehicle here that's 52 inches wide, so it can navigate a myriad of landscapes. It can go in and out of buildings, of course, because it's electrified. And think about this for a minute. At 52 inches wide with a full payload, it can go in and out of convention spaces. And that's the way it was designed, is to bring materials to the point of use. A huge advantage over conventional payloads. And speaking of which, we have a 1,500-pound payload capacity in a low-speed electric vehicle configuration. It goes up to 1,800 pounds in a non-LSEV configuration. You would think of that as closed campuses, government institutions, that type of thing. So basically, you have the ability to haul the same as a 150 vehicle, but at a fraction of the cost. And by the way, if you look at our design, a 4x8 sheet of plywood might be a good visual. That can set absolutely flat in the bed of a Vanish, whereas it's going to buckle and cradle on either side of a conventional pickup. You also have the functionality of the fact that you have a vehicle that's 13 feet wide with a turning radius of about the same. So again, transiting different landscapes is a huge advantage. And being electrified, we have an advantage over the cost too of operation. And I might just mention this too, that we're building to an automotive spec. So think of it this way. The Vanish is built as well as any electrified vehicle out in the market right now. We're not trying to take something like a golf cart and modifying it to carry a payload. We're building a real vehicle that's purpose-built. And by the way, it has different payload capability too. We can do a pickup bed, a van box, a flatbed, you name it, we can design it. so it can actually address the specific need that a micromobility operator might need.
Yeah, awesome. Now I know range anxiety is kind of a big thing. Can you speak a little bit to why LSEVs might be a good place to start, and specifically the Vanish, in terms of range anxiety goes, and the charging infrastructure needed to charge a vehicle like the Vanish?
Yeah, it's a good one for Shauna.
Sure, absolutely. So with the low-speed electric vehicle, the Vanish in particular, it has a range up to 50 miles. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider the applications using this on a university or a corporate campus, 50 miles in an 8-hour day or time span is more than enough. There's a place for electric vehicles where they make sense, and low-speed electric vehicles on campuses or urban delivery makes sense. The other part of this too with the AYRO Vanish is there's no specialized charging infrastructure required. One of the biggest challenges with converting your fleet to EVs or electric vehicles is the charging infrastructure and the cost that's incurred with that. With the Vanish, you can just use your standard outlet and charge it overnight. However, it is also built to accept fast charging stations as well, level 2.
Awesome. No, that's great. I guess, Kyle, this one is for you. How does the Vanish kind of compare to the competition? Do we have a direct competitor?
I would say no. And I say no from the standpoint of the form and function of the vehicle. First of all, it's not a modified golf cart where you can only haul maybe 75 to 100 pounds reliably in it. And you don't have the level of sophistication you do with our purpose-built vehicle. And we're also not trying to build a full-size vehicle that is designed to go at highway speeds and long distances. We're in a lane basically that is for last mile micromobility solutions under 35 miles an hour. And it's easier to think about where this vehicle is not appropriate. Maybe not appropriate running down the highway because we're posted at 35 and under as defined as a low-speed electric vehicle. If you just remove that piece of it and think of the rest of the world, it's a huge park, and we're the only ones that are really addressing it, both from a standpoint of performance, from value, from actual payload capacities. And by the way, we have modified payloads so that we have something we've developed called RoRo, so we can actually move payloads on and off this vehicle in a matter of seconds, whether it's a pickup bed, a van box, any number of different payload solutions. So there is nobody else competing in our segment.
Wow, that's great to hear. That brings us pretty close to time. I do want to leave a little bit of space for a question for Q&A. So let's see if anybody has asked any questions. One question has come in about, there was a question about, are there any like government programs currently that give tax credits for LSEVs?
I would say this, not to date, but it's coming. There's a lot of talk at government levels, both federal and state, to accomplish this because of the popularity that we're seeing in the market. And so I would expect to see that in the near future.
That makes sense. And we have another question here asking when a good time would be to start transitioning your fleet. Like,
well, you know what I'm going to say. How about right now?
Right, yeah.
Shauna, what about you?
I would completely agree. You don't have to wait for, the charging infrastructure, et cetera. Yeah, why not? Take one, test it out, see how it works for you. Yeah, and with those adaptable payloads, you could have 3 vehicles, 4 vehicles in one.
Awesome. Yeah. One question came in earlier, but I think we kind of already answered it a little bit later in the presentation. And the question was just asking, like, what kind of applications or use cases can you use the Vanish for? And I think that we kind of answered, it's a myriad of different applications, right? It can be for campus campus use, like corporate campus or educational campus use, really anything where you're needing to haul a lot of heavy things over a fairly short distance.
Yeah, and to
Well, I'll
elaborate
add
on that too.
one other that our slide doesn't show, and that's the personal use. I've gotten the calls from a number of people that say, well, will this, kind of substitute my pickup truck? Think about that question for a minute. Will that substitute my pickup truck? Think about how many pickup trucks are on the road. This was being asked by, actually, the last one was a gentleman that has a 100-acre ranch down in Texas here, and he wanted something that he could take out into his fields, feed his cattle, new fence mending, that type of thing. And he wants to be environmentally friendly. He also wants to save money on and not be buying $4 and $5 per gallon fuel for his pickup truck. And quite frankly, he loves the look, and why not? I mean, what's not to love? So I don't think we can ignore the obvious, which is there's going to be a lot of people that want to personally adapt this, whether it's a grocery getter or I'm going to Home Depot to get some fencing for a project, or I just want something cool that I can be the early adopter on. So I think that's going to be a huge market that we really haven't even addressed.
Agreed.
For sure. We have another question that came in. When might we see some of the modular accessories for the flatbed?
Today, we already have a lot of the solutions designed. We have units coming off the line right now, which are the cargo solutions. That seems to be one of the most popular configurations, I think, for obvious reasons, to secure loads and have something in a confined space that you can lock up. Shauna, maybe you want to speak to some of the upfitters that we're working with.
Absolutely. So we are working with a key upfitter. The most recent one that was announced was Cruising Kitchens out of San Antonio, upfitting the van box configuration for food and beverages. It's a powered van box, so you can use it to keep things cold, warm, and a really popular or ideal application for that is stadiums, arenas, and university campuses, or even corporate campuses. Be able to get that food and beverage to different parts of the campus, to different people, without everyone having to congregate in the same cafeteria area or having to leave campus to get food if you're in a more, if you're out in the suburbs or outside of the regular city limits. So, and that's just one of the key partners that we're working with too, as an example.
Wonderful. I think that about covers it as far as the questions go. I don't see any other ones that have come in. So I guess I'll just go ahead and wrap up the presentation. Thank you all again for joining and for participating. We will have another webinar again next month, so stay tuned to learn more. And if you're interested in learning more about AYRO or about the Vanish, please visit our website. You can use the QR code here, or you could reach out to us via email at sales@ayro.com. Yeah, and if you want to schedule a demo, we can arrange that as well. So we look forward to hearing from you.
Great. Thanks, Julian.
Yeah, thank you all. I hope you have a good day.
You too.